all my fans out there, and welcome back to the latest installment of the IPA Magear draft analysis. This is the third installment, third season in a row that we have done this. But who is we? Well, if you haven't been following or if you're new, you could be forgiven for not knowing who the we is. I have two guests, two co-hosts with me. They're goated. They've done this with me in the past. They're very good at it. I'm gonna let them introduce themselves.
How
Don't.
about you, Lewis? How
Hi,
are you,
I'm
dog?
I'm I'm Lewis. You can call me Lou.
I'm a Zebo Ziggy Ziggy Zababalo. They call me DJ Halfcore Violation. Uh, Ben Dragapult. That's all.
Dan Bragapult. I agree. Couldn't agree more. So obviously we're all Magyar coaches. So please forgive us if some of our analyses are a little bit biased. We'll
Right.
try and not talk too much about our own teams and let the other two uh, panelists, if you will, uh, take up most of the talking there. We got 16 teams here. We're just gonna give you the quick and dirty for each of them, and we'll just go. We'll snake down in draft order. So starting with Michael's team.
Yeah, I'll take it away at the very beginning. Um, I think just the first 3 months they're really nostalgic for me. Those are if you had to describe Gen 6 in 3 pictures, those would be up there. Those were 3 first round mods in Gen 6, and now they're their first 3 rounds. But I still think they're just a really good core. I really like those mods. I think it's the draft starts to fall apart later on. It's pretty hazard weak. It's a lot of the mons later on are very one dimensional. Things like Vaporeon or Thwacky or Regieleki. Indeedee sticks out like a sore thumb because Guard and Obstagoon are right there. So I think it has a strong initial offensive core, but I think it falls apart later and becomes a little too one dimensional with the supporting cast.
Yeah, I similar to what Lou was saying. I really like the first 4 or 5 mons. I think Vaporeon is really one dimensional, but I think it supports the team pretty well. Like he ran with Wish support's pretty good. But Obstagoon specifically, I think benefits a lot from Vaporeon because of Wish and Flip Turn and all that shit. I think Obstagoon is also a really good pick in the fourth slot because I think Heran can sometimes not be the best at breaking like fat psychics and shit like that. As a steel type, that's something you want your steel types to be able to take care of, and Obstagoon helps a lot with that. I think the first 5 or 6 definitely have like a pretty solid like Volturn BO type shit going with it. The main thing I would like to point out is no electric immunity. That is as whack as it gets in this scenario. There's a Vaporeon, there's a Torn, and other shit like that. There's a fucking War Turtle for whatever reason. And if you see any electric type that's going to spam the shit out of like Volt Switch, I think especially like with hazards up, your team's just going to get rolled over. Especially with shit like you got to play with Wish with Wish like really well, or your opponent just has to have no idea how to play around Wish themselves for you to like really get through it if the game lasts longer than like 10 turns, because your team's going to get worn down very quickly with hazards and constant pivoting and Obstagoon, being burned and all that type of shit.
I think it is really incredible that he got those first three, and those were all regular draft picks, as I remember. I know that Obstagoon was a free agency Grace Week edition. It is really impressive that he got those first three. Sort of echoing some of the criticisms you guys made earlier, but also to tack on, I really wish he had something to take the pressure off of Heatran to like always be a stealth rocker, because from personal experience, I can tell you Tyrantrum not going to cut it. You do need something else there. And honestly, if he got a ground type, like it would really cover a lot of his issues. So I don't know. I think that's something he should look into in the future. Obviously, Indeedee, kind of redundant with Gardevoir. Gardevoir's already strong enough, even without Psychic Terrain. I don't know if you're necessarily doing yourself a ton of favors there. I do like the Volt turn he's got going on. He's got, Flip turn on War Turtle and Vaporeon. He's got U-turn on Tornadus and Thwacky, Volt Switch on Regieleki. It's a very powerful and fast Volt Switch. Unfortunately, the only team that Regieleki could really take advantage of is Michael's own team. So I wish, I hope that he can patch some of those holes later on, but great first three. I think, despite the weaknesses, those guys will be able to pull their weight in basically every game. So credit to that.
One last thing I'm going to say about Mike's is, kind of a little synthesis of what we all said is, the no ground type's pretty bad because that means if you are switching into a Volt Switch, you're probably switching in Regieleki or you brought Thwacky or something, and neither of those are good options. In fact, Regieleki is probably the easiest mon to counter in the game. If you go with, it's got a very limited move pool. So if someone Volt switches on it, they can really easily go into a threat that's just a super hard winning matchup. And also, if you are, his team is kind of, Volt turn situated, but his hazard removal situation is so poor. It's only Regieleki and War Turtle that, if you are trying to Volt turn, but they have rocks up, that's going to be a much worse strategy. So then you got to bring like War Turtle and Vaporeon, which stinks. You never want to do that. Or you're just your entire like team is reliant on Regieleki, which also stinks. So I think maybe a Claydol as a
I think
instead of the
Donphan's still on
BB.
the board. He could get
Brook is
Donphan.
Donphan.
also still on the board if you
Yeah.
just replace the Obstagoon with Brook or some shit like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think he needs to get some way to get rocks off. Because also if someone else has a Volt Switcher, you have to keep on going into Regieleki and they have like rock step or something. I mean, you can have a bad time.
Yeah, this is the type of team that like you need to have momentum on your side like at all times, or it'll fall apart immediately. Pretty much is
So
how I feel about it.
no electric resist and no solid rock remover. I mean, unless you're running, I guess you could run Defog Torrent, which is fine. But that's your number one pick. You don't want to lock yourself into that being your defogger the entire time. Especially with that's the number one overall pick. That's not just your number one pick. So,
Shall we move on?
Yeah.
All right, Big Lou from the Igloo. Great team, honestly. Very scary. That Mew first pick. To clarify, for our viewers at home, that is Urshifu Rapid. Urshifu single went round one right after Mew. I think Rotom Mo and Urshifu Rapid make a really good Volturn core together. I like the screens. I think the screens help things like Salamence and Mew and even Gengar to a certain extent. I think all of those are very functional. I guess the team's a little on the slow side. It is made up for by, Prankster T-Wave, and Urshifu has a very powerful Aqua Jet. On top of that, multiple functional Scarfers on the team that I think can alleviate that issue. All in all, solid. I'm definitely terrified.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. The main thing for me is I think Colossal and Mega Steelix are both like really, 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 really good like value picks and roll compression and all that bullshit. They're great for it. The rest of the team though is so offense eccentric, if that's a phrase that exists. Like the first six I could very easily see being just like you could probably run that six with screens like every time if you wanted to and just like change up sets and shit like that, and then randomly throwing in Mega Steelix and Colossal, and then needing to like provide speed control and make it more into like a BO team or like a balance or anything like that is I think is going to prove difficult, especially since I think Grimmsnarl is like a really good typing but not super good at things that aren't like setting screens or cheesy shit like that. Yeah, I think you have a lot of threats for sure, and I think the threats generally fit well together, like Urshifu Gengar, Salamence Gengar, etc. So I think ultimately it'll work out as long as you keep momentum on your side and you click the right buttons. And every team is gonna. I doubt there's gonna be a week where you don't feel like you have at least one mon that has potential to just like run through.
Yeah, I mean, I agree pretty wholeheartedly with what you guys both said. I think, I think Mew's probably the best mod in the format right now, so I just took that as early as I could, and then I kind of just did a separate draft after that because I was like, you can do whatever, but I think I may have leaned too deep into the offensive threat stuff where I do worry about just getting rolled if I like make a mistake. Where people will be able to find a way to just pick apart my mons. So, I'm going to probably have to rely on Prankster T-Wave, Grim Snarl, or like Intimidate Mence, I'm going to have to, because obviously I don't want to bring Colossal every week. That would stink. So I'm going to have to try to, try to squeeze some bulk out of, all my mons, but mainly like Rotom, Mew, and Salamence. I'm going to try to have to squeeze some bulk out of that, but which is that problem is compounded by the fact that I am going to need to scarf probably one of those mons,
Yeah,
every week to keep it speed tiers relevant. My hope is that people are going to have to prep around Dragon Dance every week, and have to speed tier around that, with Mence and Mew. So
yeah.
that's one hope, but I do have some definite worries about this draft.
Yeah, I think it's really close to getting like one or two picks or switches away from being like really 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 good though. So I think if you like abuse one or two free agencies, like I think by the end of the season your draft will be pretty solid.
I should say right now I do have 6 extra points, so that is kind of my plan is to go big during the free agency window. So I'm hoarding the points right now.
Should we move over to Undead?
Yeah.
Personally, tied with like Abriel for my favorite team, my favorite draft. Um, I don't, something about even just looking at it on the dock. Really, like I don't know. I just enjoy it. I think he's fine. He's got great hazard control, great speed tiers. 3 stealth rock setters. The sleeper 1 point Quilladin Spiker pick. I think that Slush Rush will it'll work out. It'll pan out in a few matches. I think Urshifu has great synergy with Nidoking and Metagross. That those 3 right there form like a pretty potent I guess like pseudo offensive core. Metagross is hard to play offensively, but it is good support for some more offensive teams. I don't know. I really like this one. I like looking at it. I like the thought of the things that it could do. I don't know. I'll hand it off to you guys. I'm just geeking out over here a little bit.
Okay. You guys on?
Okay.
You guys.
I like it for sure. I think the first 4 are really good. I mean, Lottie's really good as well. I think Metagross is also good, but there's something weird to me about the Metagross. Did he get Lottie in Grace Week or something?
No, I think that was a draft pickup.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if there were better steals to get than Metagross. Which I feel like there might. I know Empoleon was definitely still up because I got Empoleon for Grace.
I'm really jealous of the Metagross too. I wanted that. Shame on you, Undead.
Yeah. I think Metagross is a decent steal. I'm not sure if I would have gotten it back to back with Lottie just because I mean Psychic Spam is like fine. And I guess if you have something like Urshifu, you're not really that scared of like Noct and shit like that, and Feeny, etc. So I mean it is what it is. But overall, I think the team is pretty good for sure. I really like Lottie there too. Lottie I think meshes with everything really well. Nidoking seems great. I do think his options for Scarfers aren't really all there. I guess but I mean he has Arrow, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah. Then you got a little hail shit going on. I think that little green boy, I forgot his name, is
Quilladin.
Pretty solid. Quilladin. I think he's a good 1-point pick, I guess.
Great value, Grass. Great value.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I got Reboot last season, and then I used it and it lost. It was like one of my 2 losses, so fuck value picks, I guess. And then Spiritomb is pretty cool. I like Spiritomb, so I do like the draft in general for sure. The first four specifically, I'm a big fan of.
So I'll start out by saying I do really like the draft. I think it's really good, really threatening, and I think this is probably one of, if not the better, like use of points. Like he really stretched out his points really well throughout this draft, where every mon feels like it has some amount of purpose. I do like the late Quilladin pickup. I think that is a really good niche 1 point mon to get. The cheap grass, the hazard setter. That's fine. Um, and I like Spiritomb. I think two really good mons offensively are Urshifu and Lottie, and they both you really need to check fairy, so he has Nidoking and Metagross, and I think that's like a really good. That's just a winning strategy right there. That's gonna be really hard for teams to deal with because he has two of the most threatening fairy counters in the game. Where if they get out on a fairy, they're like legitimately scary to deal with, and then two of the mons who are really hard to counter outside of fairy types. And I really like the Mega Arrow. I think my big concern, not my big concern, a concern I have or a way I think it can be improved, is I think uh, his Volturn is really bad. I mean, it's Urshifu, which is fine as a U-turn mod, but it's not ideal. It's a little bit slow, so you have to Scarf it or something. And then the Slush Rush mod. I'm a little lower on the Slush Rush than my
That is
Slush Rush than
that,
my compatriots.
that is a good point because he does have like these breakers like Nidoking,
Yeah.
Metagross, or Shifu, and he doesn't really have pivots in Latias, and he doesn't really have pivots to get him in reliably.
So that's what I'm saying. Is I mean, mods like Urshifu, like and Lottie especially. I mean, and Nidoking especially. You really want to pivot those in. Right now, really, his best way of getting mons in is to just have Urshifu or Lottie in, force in a fairy, and then go into one of his anti-fairy mons. Because other than that, it's pretty hard. Because not a lot of these have the best defensive typing either. Um, I think that the Slush Rush is so situational that I would just get a better electric type. Because, I mean, I think this draft really wants to have Volturn active for every single mod. I mean, one of the best things about Mega Arrow is that it's like the ideal late game sweeper because it's just so fast, it has such great coverage, and it hits hard enough that if you get a little bit of chip on anything, you can always get a set of like 4 attacks where it just goes through everything and there's nothing that can happen anymore.
And
So I think getting that chip through Volturn, getting in your breakers through Volturn, I think is something this draft really wants. And I think the Slush Rush is, I don't think you need more late game cleaning power. I think you need, better momentum on the team.
Undead,
Yeah,
mark my words here, Undead. Metagross for Magnezone. The trade offer is on the table. Keep it in mind.
Yeah, no, because he also doesn't really have like the type of Pokemon to where you could just go balls to the wall HO and like sack shit for momentum. Like these are mostly like the type of Pokemon you want to fit into like a BO archetype or skeleton, and generally to get your breakers opportunities on that shit, you need pivots. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean I do like all the mods, and I think it'll work as is. I think that they're just bulky enough and have just good enough typing synergy where he will be able to switch around and do it fairly easily. But I think adding a better Volturn core instead of the second late game sweeping core, which relies on 2 mons, and neither of them are really that good anyways. I think that's a easy way to improve the draft.
Let's talk about Hunter.
Yeah.
Yo, Hunter's steel type is fucking Magneton. So I've got beef with Hunter because this is pathetic. This is some pathetic shit. I mean, literally, just the fact that his steel type is Magneton is really what I'm talking about. I haven't even looked at the rest of it. But generally.
Oh, you want to start? Okay, sorry. I don't know, you said you hadn't even looked at it yet, so I was like, I'll give him some time to look at it as I.
Generally, when your dark type is Greninja and your steel type is a Magneton, I'm really scared of any offensive psychic type just running through you. I guess you have a Slowking, which is pretty cool. You can pivot, but all you're really gonna do is pivot or maybe Toxic or some shit. If it runs into Reuniclus, I think you might just lose the game. Turn 1. I mean, I guess there's Darmanitan, which could muscle through it. Worst case scenario to revenge it. I do really like Darmanitan Diancie. I feel like that's probably pretty cool. Diancie's magic bounce for Darmanitan being able to run like choice items because it's weak to rocks. That's one thing, and another thing is they both force steals to take a lot of constant damage, and Magneton trap steals as well. So I mean, steel types have work cut out for them. Also with like Slow King, Moltres, with being able to reliably answer them. So steel types have the work cut out for them versus team.
Don't forget Dragalge. Dragalge also notoriously good at forcing damage.
Yeah, 100%. And Mienshao, I really like this team in general. I think it's like a really nice like Volturn type shit. I don't think Palossand is the ideal rocker, but like it does give valuable utility here. Palossand is just too passive for what feels like a pretty like offensive team. The main thing for me is just Magneton being the steel type. I'm not a fan.
Yeah, so I really like this is like the kind of draft style that I really like. It's good fast volt turn. You got a fast kind of mon to clean up at the end with Mega Diancie. You've got a lot of stuff that can volt turn, and you've got some really good breakers where if you get in the Mienshao or the Dragalge or the Darm clean, then they can really break some stuff. Um, I think my biggest problem is that Moltres is like the most important mon in the draft. Moltres is the glue mon for this draft, which sucks. I mean, that's Moltres we're talking about. Because his team's fairly weak to ground. He's got Groddle as a resist, and Moltres as the only immunity. He also has almost no hazard control. He's got Magic Bounce and then Defog on Moltres is his only way to remove rocks. And he really does not want rocks up if he is, trying to play into the Volt Turn strategy. So also, like on my earlier point, ground's the most common coverage type in the game. Everything learns Earthquake. And ground's also just very good versus him. Dragalge, Diancie, Magneton. Those are all things that people are going to have Earthquake to look to catch those things. Either you're bringing a Groddle every week, which isn't good. That's also a losing strategy. Or you're going to have, Moltres as your main switch-in. And then Moltres, you're going to have to boots it because it's also your only defogger. And then you're switching your Moltres into it, something that learns Earthquake, so it probably learns a Rock-type move too, and then you're fucked. I mean, it's just like, I noticed a couple teams did it, is where they draft, an offensive flying type, and then have the shittiest grasp possible, and then, like, think that they're covered against ground types. That's just not going to work. I mean, if you're asking your Moltres to be your ground counter and also be your remover, I mean, that's a lot to ask of a Pokemon with some of the worst defensive typing in the game. I don't think it's going to be able to accomplish that. So I could see that being a really big issue, is that he's super weak to ground types, super weak to rocks, and he doesn't really have a way to deal with either.
Yep. One more thing from me is the fact that if he sees an electric type on the opposing team, which like most people have an electric type, he basically has to bring Palossand, and that's kind of depressing given how offensive this team is. He's gonna have something passive like Palossand sucking on momentum, but
it depends on. I mean, maybe he can bring like AV Dragalge or something in some of the easier matchups.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to Jores?
Do you have anything you want to say about that one, Brian?
Nah, I think you guys hit the main points.
Okay. Well, you can start us off with yours then.
Sure thing. Joris over here. I didn't notice this at first, but he does have the slush rush, which sort of makes up for, or not the slush rush, the sand rush. My apologies. Which sort of makes up for what I thought was kind of in lackluster speed tier earlier. I don't really know what to think about this thing. I think it's got a lot of fat at the end. Things like Diancie and Amoonguss and Hippowdon and Fortress, and I just don't know how well it complements things like Volcarona and Mega Diancie. I was wondering if I could get your guys' thoughts on that.
Yeah, so one thing I'm noticing right now is I actually really, 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 really like the first 5 Pokemon. And I like Amoonguss too, Diancie's whatever. Fortress, dude, please, ladies and gentlemen, get a Steel type that does something. Like, something that Steel type does. Because Fortress does not. Fortress, notoriously, I feel like, is capable on paper, if you think about it just a little bit, capable of doing a lot, like spinning, rocks, but it doesn't have any. It's never able to pressure anything that you want steel types to pressure. It's never able to reliably switch in anything you want steel types to reliably switch into, especially like fairies. Especially now that everything is mystical fire. So I mean, like I like Fortress as like a backup blanket steel, I guess. But like when it's your only steel type, and Diancie is your fairy type, I am not a fan of your matchup versus opposing dragon types for sure.
Yeah, both have obvious and exploitable like 4 times weaknesses.
Yeah.
I think this is it's a high risk high reward kind of draft. It's a little bit similar to mine where it's really threat laden in the first half. I mean, any of those 4 mons I think can really wreck a game at the very beginning, and then I think Hippowdon is a really good pick. So I'm with Zenin where I think the first 5 solid picks, really solid picks. I think the last 3 are a little bit slow. I do like the Amoongus too as a nice way to like get status.
And nice defensive pivot.
Yeah, it's a good pivot. If you spore something, I mean, you can really start wreaking havoc with like Volcarona or Gallade or really any of the first 4 mons. So I like that. The Diancie and the Fortress, I think those are just weak mons. You don't want to rely on those for much. So especially being those are like 2 backup rockers that you're probably just going to want to bring Hippowdon every week instead. And everything Zenon said about no agency steel type is completely true. Like I think for this draft, Bronzong's like just a 1-to-1 better version of Fortress for like.
Yeah, I think most honestly get rid of Fortress and Diancie and do like Klefki or something and it'd be better.
But I think I could very easily see Jores just steamrolling everything. His team is full of threats, but I could also, I mean, he gets 1 fast mon against him that has like a strong ghost type move, something like that. Just anything that's like a fast, strong breaker. And I mean, he's shit out of luck for the most part. He doesn't have a lot of defensive synergy. He can't really switch into much. I mean, like he's gonna switch in Gallade on like fighting types. No, you have to use like Amoongus. That's why I like Amoongus as the pivot. But like the overall defensive synergy I don't think is there. And I think it's like that's why I said it's high risk, high reward. I think if he gets a couple good predictions early game, he gets the match moving. I can see him ending games really easily, really like cleanly. But I can also see the exact opposite happening very quickly to him.
Yeah. If he was to add 1 mon right now or 2 mons right now, I would make the first one something that can something that can viably run Scarf reliably and consistently. Also, please get a steel type, and those are the main things because your speed tiers are fucked and your steel type is Fortress.
Also, I mean, Sandrush does kind of that is something, but that one's also way weaker without strong guard. With Sandrush, it's weaker.
Yeah, it's also not the best thing to rely on just for speed, like raw speed control, because Sand isn't always going to be up.
Let's talk about Abriel, my other favorite draft.
Tell us why.
I think he's got the speed tiers unlocked. He's got a really nice fire, water, grass core. I know Lewis, you're not a fan of steel fairies necessarily, without some sort of auxiliary fairy type. But I think this kind of works to make a Mawile. He's got that that clutch Drapion. I think the only real issue is the Porygon at the end. I almost think the Blissey kind of makes up for it by, actually being a stealth rocker because the other 2 are Mawile and Landorus. So Blissey, gives him that third option, lets him, play around and not get pigeonholed into, okay, this has to be my rocker every week. So, I like the options there. Obviously, plenty of hazard removal, which kind of frees him up to use Talonflame in basically whatever way he pleases. So I don't know. I am very satisfied with this draft.
Yeah.
Motherfucker.
Yeah. I like it. I like it a lot. I do think it's very threatening. Another good threatening draft. I like the Rotom Wash pick a lot. I think it really fulfills a lot of niches he likes. And yeah, the Fire Water Grass is pretty good. Just all the mons are good threatening mons for the most part. I think he's, Blissey Porygon. I mean, those two, I don't like either of those two mons. But besides that, it's all good. I don't like having, a Fairy and a Steel combined because, I mean, if he faces a Dragon type that's got fire or ground coverage, I mean, that's like he's fine. I mean, that's really threatening to his team. It's alleviated a little bit because Blissey can tank Dracos pretty well, so that is a lesser example of it being really dangerous to have your Steel and your Fairy combined because like Blissey can tank
Yeah,
Dracos,
he,
but
he's got
Garchomp
this he's got
obviously
this
is
sponge in the back.
yeah, you have a sponge for Dracos in the back. That being said, if that Draco user has Psyshock or something, or some other way to deal with Blissey, or also you're going into Blissey if they have a mon that can punish Blissey, which almost every draft should have. Let's be real. If you don't have a way to
Yeah,
punish Blissey, you fucked up. So that's not that itself isn't great, but even that isn't usually an answer to the dragon types like Garchomp or he's got Latios, so he's covered there. But I think that actually could be a problem. Is that his steel type is his steel and his fairy, two of the most important defensive types in the game, are the same mon and are slow and offensive. Which it's a very good slow offensive mon, but it's not what you want for your two backbone typings. Like if you get Mega Ma, I almost say get another steel and get another fairy because those typings are so invaluable that you really want to get you want to have those mons do their roles, which Mega Marl just doesn't do.
yeah. I do feel similar. I really like the first 5, 6, 7 mons quite a lot. I do think Blissey does indeed warrant Stealth Rocks, that's for sure, and he can indeed use it. I'm not entirely sure how well Blissey meshes with the rest of the team, just because it's so passive. I guess Teleport is a broken ass move, so it doesn't really matter that much in the right matchups. But Blissey is obviously really, really, really easy to abuse, and um, so yeah, and I also, if I were him, would prefer not to bring Blissey very often unless I see some threat that your Blissey is needed for. Um, so yeah, I'm still not really a huge fan of his rocking options. I do really like his first 7 mons in general, though. I do agree with Lewis. I think Mega Mawile being the only Steel type and only Fairy type is a damn shame because I don't think Mega Mawile. I mean, the speed tier is the main thing with Mega Mawile, where it's like you can't really rely on it to do much because it just switches in and then whatever it's looking at switches out. And if the opponent has like a pretty good Mega Mawile matchup specifically, you're just gonna get worn down. There's not really anything you can do about it unless your opponent is brain dead and can't play around like Wish Blissey or some shit, which they should be able to because it's not like Mawile comes in on shit that Blissey wishes on anyways. So it is what it is. Yeah. Also, Porygon probably will never be brought once. I'm a big fan of Rotom Wash and not a lot though. I think it's great.
Shall we start talking about Slick?
This man's speed tiers are the most depressing thing I've ever seen in my entire fucking life, dude. Look at him.
Yeah, really drops off after Rillaboom.
I think it's Mega Lop, Rillaboom, and then a bunch of mons with little to no agency that are too slow. I mean, Megalop is fast enough for you can say you have a speed tier, but I mean people just won't pre-flop, have base 90 speed and just go modest or something and specs everything, and you're just gonna get run over. A lot of the later mons are pretty one-dimensional too.
Yeah.
And they've got so little agency that I mean, you can bring in a breaker on the majority of these mons, and I mean you're gonna be out of luck when that happens.
Yeah, I do think the first 3 is a great start for sure. A really, really, really good start. In fact, you could probably stretch out to the first 4-ish, maybe. But the first 3, I think you could take in like a really nice offense slash BO slash like maybe balance direction, where Wapani is like a cleaner in the end game, or Rillaboom, where either you're aiming for Rillaboom or Wapani to be like the cleaner in the end game, and Corviknight to constantly pivot them in and shit like that. But I feel like just didn't really build around it very well. I think Incineroar is a pretty cool pick, but still like, and like honestly, all these picks like are fine in their own right, just not really what was needed. Because they're all slow as shit, and Wapani is the only thing with the really good speeds here, and then Rillaboom, I guess, can viably run Scarf to some extent.
I think what you said, like Lopunny or Rillaboom are pretty good at cleaning up late, especially, and they're good when they get in. But I feel like he didn't draft to put him in a situation for either of those. Like, how is he going to get to a point where he can clean late when all of his mons, are completely low agency mons?
Exactly. You know,
like, yeah, and also no viable Scarfers. I mean, Incineroar or Rillaboom are really the only viable Scarfers. And as someone who's run Incineroar, I think twice at this point, two separate seasons, its Scarf set is fairly underwhelming because you're still not fast enough.
Yeah.
Don't sleep on Scarf Trick or Uniclus.
Oh, baby.
Scarf Trick or Uniclus. So, I mean, I think the speed tiers are a concern. Just the lack of agency. I mean, I think the best way of getting the late game is just like get up rocks and then try to get like rough skin damage.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
And just try to like switch around, which is a strategy to be sure. But I don't. That's
it's rough. It's certainly rough. I agree.
Yeah, I guess it's mostly tough having all of these like defensive Pokemon and, truth be told, pseudo defensive Pokemon that just don't last that long. Like that don't really they can't really recover health. Obviously, Reuniclus and Corviknight, those things have plenty of longevity, but the other ones are just definitely disappointing. I think if he had gotten Swampert and then maybe tried to aim for some faster stuff instead of Weezing and Druddigon and Incineroar, I think that might have been a little better, but I don't know, Slick. We'll see what you do with it. Shout out Slick. Shout out Slick Rick.
I do like all these mods individually because I run a fair amount of bulky offense. These are all mods that I would look at and see as a good value pick for a bulky offense. But when your entire draft is them, then you're not really running a bulky offense anymore. You're just having these mods that like fill in, that one nice little niche role you like to have in a bulky offense, but then you have no way to actually get the offense going and to, accelerate the game so you can get your game plan going.
Yeah.
So,
I like that triple starter Firewater Grass core. That's tight.
True.
Should we talk about Josh?
Sure.
Definitely not.
What do you think of what's Josh going on at the end here? He's got Mega Glalie. How often do you see that?
I fuck with Mega Glalie. I think Mega Glalie is not very good, but I'm definitely a Mega Glalie apologist. I think spikes are broken. However, I don't really think I don't entirely know why he got it here because he does already have Roserade, and I feel like spikes are one of the coolest things about Mega Glalie. Now the return and frustration are no longer a thing, and hidden powers are no longer a thing.
Yeah, you're really reliant on Double Edge and Explosion, all of which just depletes your health.
Yeah,
I think if you want to get an offensive ice type, that's a good. It's fairly cheap. I think that's pretty good. I'm a fan of it for that role, but also, offensive ice type isn't something you need to fit into every draft. That's for sure.
Yeah,
it's a luxury pick.
Yeah, I definitely think it's cool individually as a mon. I don't really think it fits that well here because, like I said, I think the main reason I would get Mega Glalie is if I really want like some mon that's like a breaker but can be like a pseudo spiker and fit into my just bulky offense, straight balls to the wall offense, like regardless. And Mega Glalie does do that to some extent, for sure. But here, I don't really think it's that incredible of a pick.
Do you suspect that he's gonna have any problems with the fact that his only Stealth Rocker is Seismitoad?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is I think the draft it has a lot of good momentum. I think its speed tiers are good. It covers like the full spectrum of speed tiers, from very fast, above 100 to a little bit below 100. He covers it well. Lots of ways to get momentum and very powerful breakers. Darmanitan, Mega Glalie, and Melmetal are all strong, powerful breakers that really do like all the momentum he has going on. And I think only having one rocker is pretty bad, but having two spikers can make up for it, especially with toxic spikes and stuff like that. I'm more concerned about the one removal, unless I'm getting that wrong.
I think Coco gets defogged.
Yeah, Coco.
Coco does get defogged too. Well, that does help for sure. I still think usually you want to use that slot on Coco for something else. Usually you don't want Coco defogging because if Coco goes down, like while you're trying to defog, that's pretty bad.
Especially not on a week-to-week basis, because this is his first pick.
Yeah. But I do like it. I think it's fits a lot of the roles you'd want, and it can play out a lot of different ways. You can build a pretty darn good hyper offense team with this. You can also have a pretty good bulky offense team with this. And if you really need to get defensive enough, I think he can actually pull that out pretty well too, and play kind of the grind out game with that. So I think this draft maybe has the most flexibility of what strategy you could see from week to week. And I think this is also one of the other ones that really utilize the points really well, where you can none of these mods are like bad mods. You could bring these to most weeks and be pretty okay with it. It's not like you're drafting, a Porygon or a Grottle or something where you really don't want to. Yeah, War Turtle. It's something where you don't want to bring that. Like Primate's the worst mon here, and you know what?
Primate's pretty good.
That's
As
the
fast as,
Urshifu single strike check right there.
That's fine.
That's that.
What was that, Brian?
That's that anger point. That's the Urshifu single strike check.
Yeah. Wait, Primate gets defined, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. That's Passimian.
Oh fuck my life. Okay, ignore me.
But it's a very basic Scarf fighting type. But if you want to bring a Scarf fighting type, and gets Gunk Shot and U-turn, that's that's a good mon to bring right there. That can be a threat. So I like it. I mean, I'm not completely overwhelmed by the quality of it. I'm not like, wow, this is really. I wouldn't put it above like Undead for me, but I do genuinely like it, and I really do appreciate the flexibility.
How about you guys roast me now?
Brian up there. And it's the Brian's specialty where like all of his really good mons are slow, and then he's got like one fast mon that he's gonna rely on for all of his speed. I guess now he has Scolpy too, so he's got two fast mons. I mean, it's got a pretty good Dragon Fairy Steel, which I always like. It just feels like it's one of those teams where if someone's got a base 100 speed breaker, you're gonna get messed up. The Torkoal Charizard picks at the end I think are just wasted picks. I don't think you're ever gonna want to bring either of those mons.
In my
especially
defense,
when
in my defense, I wanted Colossal.
Yeah, that's nice, but you didn't get it, so you're stuck here with mons you're probably never going to bring, especially because you're already fairly rock weak, and your removal situation isn't great. Especially if you are bringing Mega Pidgeot, which you have to. Your two fast mons are both weak to rocks, so you got to bring removal, and you're pretty lacking in especially Serena's your main removal one, and then you're kind of stuck, and you don't want to bring Charizard to exacerbate that issue. And yeah, I also think your steel type is Magnezone, which is fine, but that's not too great either. Especially when you're facing a strong psychic type, that's not great, and you obviously have zero ghost resist. But who does this day and age?
Yeah, the main things Lou just touched on were like the main things for me. Magnezone is your steel type. Your ghost resist is AV Golurk. And that is not really going to cut it for me when you're psychic. Yeah, I actually don't mind Charizard as a pick in general because I feel like like its typing isn't the best, but it also does some things pretty well. Boots are a broken ass item, so at the end of the day, it can actually kind of do things. So I don't mind Charizard. I think Torkoal is just kind of ham-fisted. Like, what's the point? Yeah, but yeah, 100%. The main things for me, no dark type. I think if you have Magnezone as your steel type, like which you can get away with, I guess, especially when you have like Clefairy, you can definitely get away with Magnezone as your steel type. You definitely need a dark type to be able to muscle through those psychics because Blue is playing you and he's gonna bring you and he's gonna beat the living dog shit out of you because you're gonna try to use AV Golurk to check it and it's gonna die. And that's that. Yeah, but I really like it. At the same time, I think it's one of your better drafts in recent memory. I think like you have some flexibility with sets. You have a lot of ways that you can like help Suicune out with like T spikes from like Scolpy and shit like that. Como is one of my favorite mons. I fucking love Como. I think it's really good. Ton of set variety. Clefable also some set variety. I think is really good. Mega Pidgeot's probably underrated. Pretty good mon as well. The main thing for me is what I just said about Magnezone and no dark type, but also your only ground type is indeed Golurk, which is a damn shame. I feel like if you run into a team with an electric type, which most people do have, you're gonna have to bring Golurk, similar to what I was saying with Hunter with Palisand, which I really like Golurk. I think it's a really underrated mon. It's like 4 points or some shit, which I think is a great value pick, but it's not the type of thing you look at it and you're like, damn, I just have to bring this shit because they have an electric type, especially when it's its bulk isn't bad, but it's not incredible either. So it being like especially when you have something like Suicune, Mega Pidgeot, shit that's directly forced out by like every electric type in the game. You're like, well, shit, I guess I gotta go into Golurk. Yeah, it's not gonna be the most fun.
It's also his main. It's also his main rocker, which is
It's
you don't
nonsense.
want to rely
I
on
have
your
4 Stealth Rockers. Stop hating.
You got.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess Clef, but Como and Clef, one of their really big points and why they are, I think, a really solid first 2 picks is they are very versatile mons that can do a lot of things, and you kind of want to have the ability to free that up with the rock slot, and so having your other 2 rockers be both bottom of the barrel Pokemon, in terms of strength is not great.
Yeah, I agree. But I think overall the draft isn't bad. I do think you have some speed tier issues. I think you might one week find yourself running Scarf Serena and being really sad that it doesn't do anything because that's how scuffed your speed tiers might be that week or some shit. Because you don't really have any super reliable Scarf. That's a damn shame.
Let's talk about Aszi.
Hey, you're not going to talk about yourself, Brian?
No,
What do you think?
that's all you. I'm
No,
biased.
I got a word on myself. You don't get to do that. You get to at least okay. What do you think your hazard situation is? Removal
Think about
wise.
your draft in general. What were you going for?
I went for exactly what was on the board. We had to make some adjustments in the draft, but I think it turned out all right.
All right, fine. Stay coy, I guess. All right,
tell us how dog shit Ozzy's shit is. Brian.
I mean, like, what is going on here, man? He actually, in a weird way, it's built around Shedinja. Because look how much, look at that hazard support for Shedinja. He's gonna be just fine.
True.
Magic Bounce, Defog, Spin Blastoise. That's goated. I don't know. Very interested to see how this will pan out. It is a slow team, probably one of the the slowest in the whole draft. Not sure how that's. Not sure how that works to his advantage. He got a good Firewater Grass core and a good Dragon Steel Fairy core, which is to his credit. But it's definitely I'm not seeing a lot of like clear win paths with such a slow team. That is going to be tricky for him.
Yeah, I also think his defensive mons are very they're like blanket mons, like Blastoise, Arcanine, 10 growth. They all have singular typings, which is generally I feel like water as a typing is notorious for just kind of doing a lot kind of well, but not specifically checking things extremely well. It all really depends on the bulk of the Pokemon. And Tangrowth's physical bulk is crazy enough to where it doesn't really matter. But like Tangrowth, Arcanine, Blastoise as a 3-mon core, I think might struggle versus some of the more like specific like shit with really good dual stab combos, like fighting types. I think Togekiss has never really been that great of a fighting answer because most fighting types have secondary typings that just shit on Togekiss in some way, shape, or form. He does have Mega Sableye, so that's something. But I feel like Mega Sableye, looking at the first 3 Pokemon, I wouldn't expect him to get Mega Sableye personally. But I mean, it's not bad either. No Ghost Resist is really unfortunate, especially when you have Shedinja, I guess. I feel like there are a lot of things he could have done better, but it's not so horrible to the point where it's like, wow, this is not viable. His first 2 mons do a little bit make up for the lack of a speed tier, I guess, and 3, I guess, if you want to say that, because they are viable Scarfers. But I mean, that's generally not the thing you want to hear from your top 3 Pokemon. Like throwing Scarf on them all the time. I remember last season I had to use Scarf Hydreigon way too much. And that was like my second pick.
Especially if you're only 2 rockers too.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I think it's not bad. I mean, actually, no, it's pretty bad. But I mean, I don't know. I think he'll have a very difficult time with like 1 or 2 specific mons from each draft. And there's not a ton he can do about it unless he reshapes his defensive cores or puts it in a more offensive direction and gets rid of fucking Sableye and Shedinja.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Well, I agree with kind of that. I really like his cores. I mean, I think that's a really good Dragon Steel Fairy. That's honestly one of the best.
I definitely agree with that. Yeah,
that's one of the best Dragon Steel Fairies you can get, and I actually think I mean, I'm astounded he took Blastoise before Arcanine or Tangrowth because I think that the latter 2 are way better mons. And water types that spin. There were like a number of those. I mean, I'm pretty sure Tentacruel's still on the board, which would have been better, I think, in this situation.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
But I think when you have cores as solid as that, you'll probably find a way to be fine. I think the strength of his cores alone might be enough to win him some games, but I mean it's so slow. Like anything above 100, and if you're fast, you're gonna fuck him right up. I mean, and if you hit hard, you're gonna fuck him right up. Yeah, I mean, I think Ditch Ninja. I think Mega Sableye is the most egregiously bad pick to me. I think it does nothing in this draft whatsoever. I think what Zenin says. I actually don't think you need to restructure your core. I think your cores are really solid, really good. I think change maybe around next free agency period when you have more points. Get a fast offensive Mega if those are still around. A real threatening Mega that can make up for your lack of speed tier and can provide another win con. And then you're good. I mean, I think that's really all he needs to do. Maybe pick up with Ghost Resist because
So when I say that, the main thing is like, I think what I would do immediately is I would get a fast, like Lou said, get like a fast Mega or some shit. I would get rid of Blastoise. Blastoise, Mega Sableye, Shedinja. I would get Tentacruel and a fast threat Mega maybe, and a fucking Ghost Resist. Those are the main thing, and I think it would be like a pretty good draft.
Bada bing. Jarrett?
Look at this fucking dickhead with goddamn Toxapex. I think the first 5 Pokemon are pretty good, actually. I think this draft is pretty good. For sure. Toxapex, Jarrett has a gaping vagina. Mega Scizor is great. Zygarde's great. Blacephalon is great. I think Blacephalon, Mega Scizor in general is like a great core.
I believe Hunter found success with that at one point.
Yeah. I was eyeing Electros all throughout the draft. I don't think it's like incredible or anything, but I think it's serviceable. I think Persian-Alola actually might be like a really underrated pick just because the speed tier is so great, and I feel like it's just a great fast pivot with a fur coat, ghost resist, knock, put boots on it. etc. He doesn't. Let's see. His rocker options are Miltank and Celebi, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not personally the best in my opinion. I'm not a huge fan of that. But I do think generally that he's going to come up with like some pretty solid balance in VOs for sure. With like centering around like Blacephalon as the early breaker, and then late game Scizor or Zygarde or some shit winning the game. Zygarde plus T Spikes also is very scary.
Yeah, I really like this draft. I mean, I like the draft. I really like all the Mons. I think this is another one where the points are stretched out really efficiently, and I think every Mon has a good viable space where you bring it and you don't feel bad about it. I think having your only form of removal be your first pick and Mega Scizor blows. You do not want to handcuff your Mega Scizor to being a defog slave every single week, especially when your team does have some decent hazard options with, Toxic Spikes and two pretty solid Stealth Rockers where you don't want to have to lock yourself into defog, not much less defog on, a Mon that's supposed to be your fast Mon or your sweeper. So that feels pretty bad. Also, Persian Alola is like the Gloomon. That's his big Dark Resist, and his team's fairly weak to Dark. It's also his only Ghost Resist, which also well besides Miltank, but it's the Ghost Resist is the most agency. It's a little bit slow, but it's made up for with all the Scarfers, and I think it is really threatening offensively. So I think there's some holes and questions with the hazards, but other than that, I think it's a pretty solid team.
Oh yeah, hazard removal is pretty scarce, huh? Yeah. You could try to. Yeah. Hazard game will definitely be difficult for this one, especially since I think it'll end up being. There's no like balls to wall offense option for him with this. It's going to be BO or balance every time, and generally you want to be able to at least somewhat control the hazard game with shit like that, because you have to play a little bit more on your heels. And switch into shit, and hazards make that a lot more difficult. And you want to, especially with like Blacephalon, you don't want to run boots every week. You want to be able to run like specs and shit like that. So yeah, I think get better control on the hazard game, and get better rockers, get better hazard removal options, and then you're pretty good. You're pretty much good to go from there.
Absolutely. I think that's that. Obviously, Scizor great synergy with Blacephalon. Scizor also great synergy with Zygarde and Toxapex. I think those two support it really well. So definitely excited for that. Rooting for you, Jer. Rooting for you.
Get another spinner.
Get another spinner. Let's talk about why.
Why do you get Zarude so early? Why? I don't like Zarude, but that's
Zarude. Where's Zarude at?
What's the electric type called? Zeraora. Don't like Zeraora. I don't like Zeraora. I think it's a good electric type, but I mean it's not. I don't think it's worth a first rounder usually, and it's pretty important to this draft. But overall, I kind of like the draft. I don't like a lot of the Mons on it, and I think if I had to pick one biggest weakness, to me I think the fairy type is pretty important. And I think his big fairy is Comfy, and I don't think Comfy does anything you want your fairy type to. And I think Comfy's lost its luster now that people kind of know what it can do. That it's like if your opponent can't play around Comfy, they deserve to lose. But most people can play around Comfy.
Yeah. You go into your steel type. That's how you do it. Yeah, I definitely agree. Comfy's unfortunate. One thing I really, really, really like about this team that he was kind of able to squeeze in towards the end is Mega Houndoom plus Aegislash. I think that's a really good core that supports each other really well. I think Lando plus Zeraora is like a decent core. Not a huge Zeraora fan either. I think people overhype it in draft leagues quite a bit all the time, and I've never fully understood it. It's not the worst Pokemon. One thing I think is hazard removal, not the best. He has Lando, and not much else. I guess Defog Comfy, is that a thing? The orange
Yeah,
Defog, right?
yeah.
Yeah, he's got a Spiker with a Roselia, which, I mean, if you want to try and control the hazard game with Spikes Roselia, you can go for it, I guess. But that's not personally something I would want to go for. So yeah, hazard game might be difficult to reliably keep under control, but I do think there's tools aside from that to win games. Like I said, I think Aegislash Houndoom's really good. I think like Zorora, Lando, Aegislash, Houndoom, Milotic, Necrozma. That's a pretty good 6. I think like that's a pretty good 6. I think the other 3 mons or 4 mons aren't very useful. And
What's up with
yeah,
that Volbeat? What is it just a mascot? What does that even do anymore?
don't know.
It's just the team cheerleader, right?
Probably, I guess so.
Should have got plus or mine, and that would have made more sense.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of an example where I think the points, this is an inefficiently pointed draft. I think the Roselli and the Houndoom are really good late game picks, and I think they do complement the first 5 really well. I think you take away the Kangaskong, the Volbeat, and the Comfy, and you try to get 2 mons, mainly just a better fairy, and then a last mon that you feel like good about bringing, because you don't. I mean,
hazard removal.
Honestly, those last 3 mons, those 3 mons, I think would feel bad to bring any given week.
Yeah,
but I do think he can definitely get some wins. I would really like the Aegis / Houndoom, and I think the Necrozma. I think that mon's one of the more underrated mons in the format. I think Necrozma can really easily cheese out wins.
I agree.
So,
a lot of variety.
This is one to watch for me, especially if you make some changes throughout the season. Just some simple improvements, like just improve the fairy, and then do something with the last 2 slots. And I think that's a really good base for a draft.
Yeah, very goated on the Mega Houndoom Aegislash. Good looks. Hey Zenin, what's up, dude? You
What's poppin'?
was bopping. Well, you made some Grace Week changes. You want to fill us in on those real quick?
Yeah. So originally I wanted Mega Scizor in the draft, and I wanted to get Mega Scizor Victini. But since I was so late in the first round, I assumed I wouldn't get Mega Scizor, or there was like a chance, but I probably wouldn't. So I decided if I didn't get Mega Scizor, which I didn't end up getting Mega Scizor, as you can see, Jarrett has it. I would go for Victini, Scizor, Mega Gyarados as my first three round picks. And in my head, I didn't even really think about the rest. In my head, that 3 sounded great. What ended up happening was I didn't really have my speed tiers were really whack. That was one thing. What else? What you Beanas helped me quite a bit with the changes. Mega Sceptile over Gyarados. That was one big.
I think we also replaced a Klefki.
Oh yeah, there was a Klefki. Klefki feels like shit to have, dude. Klefki is just an unfortunate Pokemon. It does a lot of things, and like Prankster T-Wave, Prankster Spikes is cool, but like it's not very good. Its typing, I think its typing is supposed to do a lot, but as we talked about Mega Mawa earlier, it tries to do too much, and it never can really do it all. So Klefki's an unfortunate mon, and that being my like secondary steal.
Yeah.
I mean, I already had Scizor, so it was fine. But I basically replaced that with Empoleon. Empoleon's a way better steal. It's a reliable rocker and another hazard removal option, which is really important here. Yeah, I got Tauros as well, which is kind of a good speed tier. Can cheese out some matchups if need be. What else is there?
I think
I'll just say
that was the main stuff. Go ahead, Lou.
Yeah.
I mean, just from here, that I wasn't aware of your original draft. I think this is a much improved version. I mean, I do think the Mega Sceptile is way better for this draft over Mega Gyara and Empoleon. 100%. I take that over Klefki. I think you don't have a fairy, but that's actually fine because we have 2 solid steel types, one offensive, one more defensive.
If I really need a fairy.
And you have a ton of fighting counters. You have, fighting types are mostly useless against you. You got Victini and Zapdos and Araquanid and Nidoqueen. I mean, you've got a lot of good stuff. So you got the kind of the role of fairy to soon buy their stuff. I think it's good offensively. I really like the Galarian Zapdos. I think that mon might be underrated. I think it might take the format by storm. I mean, you're kind of weak to dark, kind of weak to ghost. You don't really want to use Zapdos or Tauros as defensive mons, or you never really want to feel good about pivoting those in really. I think you may have to lock yourself into scarfing Victini a couple weeks, and I know you said you hated doing that with the Hydreigon, but I think you might need it just to get fast U-turn activated for your draft.
I think Zapdos is also a fine functional scarfer.
Yeah.
And it synergizes. It meshes really well with the sticky webs.
Mm-hmm.
The Defiant is clutch.
I hate sticky webs. Fuck that.
Blicky webs.
Besides my hatred for sticky webs, yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty good. It's I don't think it has any gaping flaws, and I think its offense is pretty potent. But there's nothing that's too outlandishly crazy about the draft in any direction. I think especially any weakness can be patched up pretty easily with free agency. Like I think getting a dark type or something, or a bulkier normal type, easy ways to fix a lot of your problems.
I'm a tad biased because I helped with the Grace Week changes, but I'm satisfied with the end result.
Yeah. I think the main thing that Lou said about it not being that crazy is the fact that my round 1 pick was Victini, which I think is generally most people would put in round 2. Mm-hmm. I just really wanted to secure Victini Scizor because I feel like that's a really good core. They muscle through waters together, and Scizor sets it up against steals with U-turn, and Victini sets it up against whatever and they support each other really well. So I really wanted to secure Scizor Victini in some way, shape, or form.
They also both feed into Mega Sceptile so well that it's kind of hard for me to believe that wasn't the initial, plan. I think the Mega Sceptile pick is, really does tie the draft together. I think. Yeah. I assume it was Brian that suggested that.
Yeah, it was.
Baby,
that is a.
That's one of my favorites right there.
It's fine. Mega Sceptile is my favorite grass type and dragon type. It's like top 3 favorite Pokemon. So I don't know why I didn't think of it myself.
Bada bing. Let's talk about Nathan.
I think this is another one that has pretty good point allocation. I like the Garbodor, Gourgeist, and Raichu picks. I think those are all mons that have really good niches where they actually feel really good if you can find the right matchup, and I think you will be able to find the right matchups. I mean, Raichu when you already have Rotom Heat, less sure about that, but I think it's very threatening. Another one that's just a little bit too slow. It's slow and doesn't have great defense. So it's it falls victim to what we've seen a couple drafts. Be weak to a fast breakers or can really run through this. You gotta bring Gigalith Excadrill every week pretty much, and scarf the Hydra, and that's how you're gonna deal with it. Because, I mean, you don't want to rely on Ribombee for much, especially not for revenge killing, because that thing does not have the coverage to, really threaten.
It's also just weak as shit.
Yeah, it doesn't have the coverage or the strength to actually threaten the majority of the game out. So, I think it's going to be a pain to prep around, trying to not get swept by Excadrill while still finding ways to switch into Megacham and Hydreigon. I think that's going to be a pain to prep around, but there's definitely concern on the other end.
Yeah, I think the draft is not bad at all. I'm not a huge fan of the Mantine pick specifically. Why? I just don't think Mantine's that good. I feel like it's super passive. As a hazard removal, at least. I mean, if you want to go offensive Mantine, you can, I guess. But I mean, I feel like that's its own meh. I think Gigalith, Excadrill, Hydreigon, Metacham. That's a pretty good, or Rotom Heat as well. I feel like that's a pretty solid 5-month thing. I really like Garbodor. I think it's way too cheap. I don't know about way too cheap, but it's definitely very, very, very cheap. It's pretty solid, Spiker, and its defense is good enough to where its raw poison typing can be pretty good as just like a blanket check to both fairies and fighting types, depending on which ones, I guess. Regigigas is Regigigas, I suppose. Gorgeist is pretty cool because like you do have hazards, Garbodor, Rabombi. You can build teams with those hazards in mind, and I think Gorgeist is like a pretty underrated like offensive mon in general. Like it's got pretty cool offenses. It's not a bad typing. It's spin blocker. Metacham is great. Hydreigon's great. Gigalith Excadrill I think is great. So I think there's potential. I don't really like the Raichu pick, and like I said, Mantine I'm not huge on. I feel like you could have done different things with that slot. Maybe get a better water or more offensive water maybe or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually think the Ribombi fits pretty well on this team. I mean, it gives him, the necessary speed tier, and also that thing is gonna, bait in a lot of steel types, which, it's gonna be able to U-turn on and bring in Excadrill and Mega Metacham to, actually do some damage. So I'm happy with that. I like Garbodor's synergy with Hydreigon in a weird way. I don't know if that stands out to either of you guys.
Sure.
And then the Regigigas, not really buying the hype train here. I get all the cool stuff. Oh, it has protect and rest now. It still takes 5 turns to set up basically, which is enough time for your opponent to take advantage of you. Especially if you're using protect or using rest, which gives them free turns, basically guaranteed. If you're resting, they know that they have 2 turns where you can't really touch them. So I'm not really buying the whole hype train here. I hope it does something, but I suspect that it won't. That's my take.
Yeah, I don't mind Rabombi honestly because like Metacham can be supported by webs or some stun spore bullshit. Yeah, Rabombi's not in like first like special darks. I guess he has like Hydreigons, and like Hydreigon's like the main special one that you would want fairies for. But I was gonna say like something like Gigalith can like answer those too. Yeah, I don't think it's a bad draft at all. I definitely think it has some strong points. Hydreigon Metacham is pretty solid starting point. I love Rotom Heat as well with Hydreigon. Yeah, I think Robombi's pretty good too. Garbodor's great, etc.
I think Ribombi does work with the draft, but it doesn't fulfill the role of fast mon / revenge killer.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's still Robombi.
That's not what the Ribombi does in this draft. It does something else, which is pretty useful. It's a pretty good bug type to really really synergize with the draft well. Fairy a little bit, but it's still I'm not convinced it's going to fill the role of even with webs, which I still don't like that much. I don't think it's going to fill the role of the speed tier that he needs, and I think he's going to have to like scarf Hydra or Rotom or something.
A fair amount, yeah.
Should we talk about Tristan?
Absolutely.
Let's talk about his dog shit. Fucking, what is this, Tristan? What am I looking at the end here?
This might be the third. This might be the third tacked on weather core that we've encountered.
I think it's the fourth.
These people are fucking assholes. You're one of them, Brian.
I know. I'm guilty of it myself.
I think this is the most egregious example. This is a 3-mon one, and I mean, real and
yeah,
he's already here. One of his staple mons is already ground type.
And it's
already ground type rocker. Yeah, I mean, this is the most egregious example of a poorly distributed points. Is honestly the last 4 picks. I think barely bring anything. I mean, I think if you get the last 4 picks combined, you get toxic spikes and rapid spin. I mean, you know what? Just get a tentacle at that point.
Yeah. Wait a minute, true.
But even tentacle is really redundant with Primarina. Like I'm a big fan of Quillfish, but I mean I'm a big fan because it does a role really well of being a water type that can switch into fighting types, fire and physical fire types pretty well, and then punish with status or hazards. But I mean Primarina already does like the most important part of that better. It's a reason it costs more points. So, like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I don't like the Quillfish pick, which is crazy. I never thought I'd ever say that. I think really mons like Infernape and Zarude and Garchomp are going to have to carry the weight of this team, which they might be able to do because, Spectre is really only gonna. I think Spectre, it's gonna work well at the end as just specs it and clean with a ghost type move, and I think that actually might be a viable strategy this season because I've been keeping track. A lot of teams are weak to ghost, so I do think that's kind of a meta analysis of it. I think that actually might be one of his more viable strategies, but it's it's got some issues.
Yeah. This man sniped my Rotom Frost like a dickhead. Um, I think the Celesteela Mega Garchomp is fine. I guess I think Infernape is a great Pokemon. Primarine is a great Pokemon. Not a huge fan of Spectre in draft format because it literally does one thing. It's just
Exactly one
type moves. Yeah. But I mean, it's in end games, stuff like that tends to not matter because you play around with that as your win con and you try to get things in range of it to be able to spam ghost type moves. So it's not that big of a deal. I think Zarude is really good. Its typing is unique. It's a good Pokemon in general. It'll be a pretty good pivot here. Good core with like Primarina as well. I definitely think there are some strong points. The first one, pretty much every Pokemon that isn't the last four is capable of bringing something to the table of some sort. I also don't think there are any mons that specifically stand out as like really threatening. I mean, Steela is the first round pick. That's more than fine, of course. But I don't think it's going to be the most overwhelming thing ever. Mega Garchomp round 2 is fine, I suppose. I know he sniped like 3 people with a really early Mega Garchomp. Rotom Frost, I think, is still one of the most criminally underrated mons ever in this fucking shit. 3 points, that's fucking ridiculous. Agree or disagree with me, I don't care. It was at the top of the fucking kill leaderboards the last season. Yeah, but the Sandcore just makes no sense. Get rid of it immediately.
I actually think Spectre has a lot of good support in the Firewater Grass core. All of those resist Dark, and one of them, resist Ghost. And then I think Quillfish actually does bring something to the table in the sense that it can lay Toxic Spikes for Spectre to abuse.
Normal spikes, yeah.
And normal spikes, too.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't mind Quillfish that much, but I do see what Lou was saying.
Yeah, I'm like I said, that's the if we really talk about the last 4 picks in general, the only thing he gets out of it is a Toxic Spiker, which I mean that's there are a ton of mons to Toxic Spike. I agree the Toxic Spike's pretty good, but I mean come on, man. You could have picked one with a different niche.
To be fair, Roselia was already gobbled up, so I'm sure he would have got that if he had the option.
But yeah, I think actually, I do think Spectre is the mon to watch on this. While it being very one-dimensional, I think it actually has really, really good support on this draft in general. And I was skeptical at first, so that I was lower on the draft at first. But after just sleeping on it one day and thinking about how weak everyone else is to Ghost, and Brian brought up how he has really good answers to Ghost counters. And, he has ways. He does have good ways to get chipped throughout the battle. He's got 2 U-turn users that are fast enough. He's got some priority. He's got some strong mons. I mean, I think, that's the strategy to watch. I'm interested to see how it works because I do think this. I mean, No Pursuit. This is the gen for Ghost Spam if there ever was a time. And, a fast, a strong, special Ghost type. And you don't need it to do much else. I'm intrigued to say the least, but
Absolutely.
I think it's a good draft.
Quick shout out to Mega Garchomp and Celesteela. Those are brothers in arms right there. That's good synergy. I think a lot of people were hot on that, especially just Mega Garchomp in general, but the kind of pairings it could create. So no wonder he got it round 2, huh?
Yeah.
He really didn't want it to, I mean,
fall into the wrong hands.
He didn't want to have to wait another, basically 2 rounds
Absolutely.
before it gets to him. So I understand that.
All right. Last but not least, or maybe least actually, Snombie.
Yeah, this is my least.
I'm very excited for him to use Scarfleafeon on every single draft he comes up with because this is the most offensive speed tiers I've ever seen in my life. My eyes are really upset about it. Maybe Scarf Auroras. Maybe we're rolling with that. I like how he got Vicavolt. He can set up webs, so his Scrafty can hopefully clean.
That's the saddest statement ever. You're like, oh,
I
yeah, hopefully
pers-
the Scrafty
personally,
can.
I'm shocked that he didn't get Arctivish because that's a Slush Rush user, dude. Come on,
Yeah, wait a
do
minute. Why'd you
better.
even get this Auroras? What the fuck is it doing
Aurora
here?
is terrible. So I'll say the things I like. I mean, Zardex I think is always a potent mon. You know, it's scary. I like Gliscor. I think has pretty good synergy with it and can provide some defog. And I think actually the first 6, maybe even 7 picks on their own, they're all fairly
Yeah,
good picks. I kind of like them,
yeah,
but they don't work together. And I mean, the draft ends up super lacking.
yeah.
I think obviously we covered speed tiers. This is the biggest example of fast breaker. You're done for. If anything's over base 100 and can nasty plot or sword stance, I mean, you're screwed.
Ghost
Um,
resistance Kamala, or I guess a Scrafty. But I mean,
Scrappy.
like, imagine facing like Gengar with this.
yeah,
Like, you just
Imagine
lose.
facing Gengar in general. That's just not a fun prospect.
um,
True. You're facing it this week.
he's rock weak. I mean, he's stealth rock weak specifically, but also he's rock weak. His remover is Gliscor, his number 2 pick, which you don't really want to use. Or then you have to then bring Vikavolt or Kamala, and neither of those are like solid removers either. In fact, you probably don't ever really want to bring Kamala. That's not like a
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
Kamala is certainly not something you draft excited to bring on a weekly basis.
yeah. And then the last 2 picks are complete throwaway.
Yeah, I'm very confused as to why he got either of them.
He's one of the few teams where like he's not ground weak. I guess he's a little bit water weak, but I mean, that's the Leafeon's terrible, and Auroras, I mean, that's really bad. I
Yeah,
guess I think Auroras, like, I can understand because one of the genuine concerns I have is that he's not really potent on the special side. Like, he doesn't really have a lot to threaten you, and so I wonder if facing him, people are just going to bring like they're going to deal with the Vikavolt and the Slowbro and the Sylveon, as kind of defensive mons, and they're really just going to bring like max defense on a couple things to try to live through the Zardex, and that's just how they're going to deal with it.
I want to.
I think there's a bunch of holes in this one, so I'm not really sure how to fix it.
I want to come to Snombie's defense. I acknowledge that he has some serious offensive holes. I mean the team is just very slow on the whole, which is not gonna pan out for him super well. His boosting options consist of Scrafty and Charizard. The other sweepers don't really boost their speed. But in his defense, actually, really solid defensive core between Gliscor, Slowbro, and Sylveon. That's actually
yeah,
that's not. There's no obvious way to break it. It's got status covered. You got a dragon immunity. You got an electric immunity. You got your ice resist, water resist. There's no obvious like flaw there. I think that can really hold
Besides
its
some
own
stuff.
in a lot of matches.
yeah, yeah. In fact, the first 4 picks I think are fine. The main thing for me is right after that Sylveon pick, he went for yet another like defensive crutch with Bronzong, which I think is pretty good on its own. But I feel like you could have gotten like a different steel, maybe like Dublade or really any steel that like has some sort of offensive niche, and go for rocks somewhere else.
It just
Uh,
gets so egregious that he goes down in like speed with every single pick.
yeah,
And
yeah,
he doesn't start out fast. He starts out with base 100, and it goes down. I agree. Like the first 4 picks, I think that's a solid base. You could build around that and kind of work up from there. But then you get to bronze, and you're like, oh, I guess it's a steel type, but yeah, he has the rocker and the bulky psychic, and
yeah,
it's not really passive. It's pretty passive. Seems a little too like a luxury pick. Then you get to Vikavolt, and you're like, okay. I mean, he's got to start picking something up. He's got to get something that's fast or really generates pressure. Then it's Scrafty, and then after Scrafty, I mean, his draft's basically over. So he just never really gets the extra pieces going.
yeah.
I think maybe he could scrap like the back half of the draft and get some offense in there. But what do I know?
Wow. congrats, guys! All 16 squads knocked out. Do you guys have anything you want to plug?
Well, I think we should say. I mean, we kind of touched on it during, but we should try to think of our favorites or least
Oh
favorites.
yeah. We did that last time.
Sure. Um, I mean, for me, I said earlier, Undead and Abriel, and I think, the longer I looked at it, the more I think Zenin's kind of grew on me. So, bada
Hey,
bing. Um, so yeah, that's about it. I think you can jump back to those, and I kind of explained why.
Yeah, I do like Zenin's too, but I think I'm going to keep it out of my favorites mainly despite Zenin, but also because there are some other good ones where like I can't really put them. Um, I I do like Undeads, as we already covered. I do like Undeads, and I think that's going to be a popular favorite. Um, I think there's not a lot of ways to improve that one, which is obviously a good sign. But I think the one way to improve it is so obvious that I would not be surprised if in 3 weeks this is, the clearest, like best draft out there.
mm-hmm.
Because that's such an easy thing to fix. Jores, I'm looking forward to with I'm keeping an eye on because I think a couple free agency changes. I think that first core is so like powerful. I think Mega Gallade, Zapdos, and Volcarona are honestly, I think, they're all rated very highly, and I still think they're some of the most underrated mons in the format. So, I'm keeping an eye on that one. And also, my dark horse is Josh's. Is I think that the flexibility of Josh's is something that needs to, it was. I didn't realize it when I first looked at it, but he can really do whatever the hell he wants with this any given week, and I do really appreciate that. So I'm putting Josh as my number one on that. Not really power level, but more like usability. That's how I'm looking at that.
Yeah. For me, my favorite's probably Abriel's. I think if he just changes the last two mons, it's like really, really good. I'm actually gonna leave Undead out of my favorites because while I think it has great pieces, I think the lack of pivots is like almost just a deal breaker to me, and like the functionality of the team in practice, not as much on paper, but in practice, I think the fact that the fact that he has no pivots will inhibit him quite a lot. Uh, but I think, but as Lou said, I think that once free agency happens, I think he'll be able to fix that pretty easily, and it'll start being very good. Um, uh, Also, as Lou said it perfectly with Jores. I think his first five mons are just so good, and throw Mungus in there as well. I think Mungus is fine there. Uh, I think there's like I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being my favorite draft by far by the end of the season. Because I really, really, really like the first five. But yeah, Abriel's probably my favorite, and I'm gonna throw mine in as well to inflate my own ego. So mine and Abriel's are my two favorites,
Very
and I
good.
actually like Josh's too, but not as much as mine and Abriel's.
I'm hesitant to bet on Josh because I think last season I marked him as my favorite, and it didn't really pan out.
The season before, he had one of the worst drafts I think I've ever seen in my entire life.
And made it to the semis, baby, or made it to finals.
The time he just had like four fighting types for no reason.
God, that was
Yeah.
terrible. But
Incredible.
it worked. I guess it was just. I mean, it was Como was too strong for Galar decks.
Yeah.
Como, there weren't enough good answers to that Como. Well, that shit was clangorous solely.
Yep.
All right, boys. Any plugs?
Fuck no.
Yeah, nope.
Follow me on Instagram. I'm not gonna say my Instagram. He's gonna have to figure it out.
Let's all have a great season. We plug that. Let's all be
Let's plug a
respectful of one
good
another.
season.
Let's enjoy what we've got here. Let's get it going. Let's play our matches on time. How about that?
Never forget that Rad Chance took the RU ladder by storm.
Yeah, don't forget. Hey, do your pick'ems. Bet against me. You know what? I'm gonna say this: bet against me, because then if I win, I'll feel happier, and if I lose, I'll feel pretty good because everyone else got their pick'ems right. So
If you want points, don't bet against me.
Bada bang. All right.
so
I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.